All right, thanks, Megan. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Beaufort Regional Chambers Community Advancement Council meeting for October 27th. The Community Advancement Council is a group open to any member of the Beaufort Regional Chamber, any employee of any chamber member who wants to stay up to speed with what's going on local, state, and federal political issues, policy issues, and this is also a forum for us to talk, gather some feedback from our members about emerging issues. We get this group together at least once a quarter, and we're accelerating those since there are a lot of things brewing in our community at the moment. So we're glad to have a good and growing group on today, see some familiar faces. I will dive right in. We're scheduled at an hour, and if we need that time, we'll take every bit of it. If you guys are finished and we run out of questions, we'll end early. And as was noted earlier, we are recording so that other members who aren't able to join live can listen in later. So I will dive right in, and I saw our friend Will Frierson from the South Carolina Chamber jump on. We didn't talk in advance, but I may put Will on the spot a little bit later to talk about state issues. But I wanted to dive into more local stuff first, and start with Reimagine Rebo. The city of Beaufort hosted a workshop this week where the primary topic of conversation was the Reimagine Rebo project. I've pushed a lot of information out.
Some main voices that are easy. And
the chamber has about this topic over the past couple of months. And probably unsurprisingly, the mood on Tuesday night at Beaufort City Council in response to the county's presentation about the initial proposed Rebo configuration was not positive. There were a lot of folks in the room, and the overwhelming sentiment was negative about the proposal, specifically the reduction from 4 lanes to 2 lanes in the northern stretch of Rebo Road. That was the primary concern. The roundabouts were another significant concern that a lot of people expressed concerns about. I fully expect the county is going to adapt this proposal. I don't know exactly what that adaptation is going to look like or what the process will be, but they've heard pretty strong feedback now from a couple different fronts that it's probably going to be challenging to remove travel lanes in what's probably the 3rd busiest travel corridor anywhere in our region. Also one that's where fire department, police assets, our hospital, and our technical college are all located, and is also the major truck route. It's not technically an evacuation route, but if a bridge goes down, if the downtown Woods Bridge goes down, Rebo Road bears the brunt. So there's a lot of reasons why citizens are rightly concerned about the reduction in capacity that's proposed there. But I'd urge everybody to look further south in the proposal for Rebo Road. There are other components that are significant net upgrades. So while the highlight grabbing or attention grabbing highlight of that proposal is that lane reduction, and a lot of people are animated about the roundabouts, a turn lane going on to the Ladies Island Bridge at the major intersection there at Rebo and Ladies Island Drive. That would be a major add. There's also a dedicated turn lane into the hospital for people traveling northbound on Rebo Road. Some intersection improvements, pedestrian and safety improvements, and I think what's one of the more accident prone and has been in the past deadly intersections at the entrance to the Naval Hospital, right at the Naval Heritage Park, a major reconfiguration of that intersection, which is particularly fraught. So there are good things to like in this plan. I expect we're going to see a county engineering and infrastructure team that's responsive to community input. And by the way, this project is not funded, so there's nothing likely to happen with this project for a while, but it certainly has drawn a lot of attention. Any questions about Rebo Road? We have not weighed in yet as a chamber, but we have shared with our members and gathered input from a lot of members, particularly those employers along that section of road. We're collecting all that input, sharing it with the county, and we're poised to weigh in after the board's had a little more time to ponder. And again, we are expecting some changes, but any questions from anybody on the call about that significant piece of infrastructure under discussion in our region? All right. Hearing none, I'll keep moving. Another county topic. We were pleased to be able to applaud the county council earlier this month for adopting a blanket IGSA, that's intergovernmental service agreement, between the county and the Tri-Command, our 3 military bases in Beaufort. This is the start of a even deeper relationship, local government with military base. And these are the kinds of things that the Pentagon takes pretty seriously and is happy to see in military communities like ours, when they gauge community support beyond the levels of patriotism that we routinely show as a community. These more tangible outcomes are a big deal. What the IGSA allows is basically for Beaufort County to provide services, including procurement services, for the military in ways that they are more cost efficient and time efficient than the military's process would be. And this can represent a significant savings. It can also represent a offloading of ancillary responsibilities, things like waste collection, perhaps, or building maintenance. Some of those functions could be paid for by the military to Beaufort County, leveraging their capacity. No specifics are included in this, but the measure adopted by county council gives the county administrator pretty broad authority to enter into these intergovernmental service agreements with local bases, to be nimble, flexible, and responsive to their needs. This is a really, really solid foundation and a great step for what's our single biggest economic driver in Beaufort County, northern Beaufort County for sure. The military bases generating $2.5 billion a year in economic activity. So our ability to support them is a really big deal. We applaud the county for that, and are happy to see that move forward and hopefully become some more tangible outcomes. There are already topics of discussion underway about what that service agreement might look like. On the local municipal front, we've got elections for mayor in both Port Royal and Beaufort. Port Royal will also elect 2 council members. There are only 2 candidates filed, so the outcome of that is pretty well known. So the question on November 7th for Port Royal voters will be incumbent Mayor Joe DeVito or challenging sitting city council member or town council member Kevin Phillips. If you haven't had a chance to go watch the Chamber's candidate forum that was held earlier this month, I think that was back 2 weeks ago Monday, we encourage you to go do that. It's available on our Facebook page, also available on the county channel or on the town's Facebook page, and we'll be linking to it as well in email communications. So we'd encourage you to go take a look at that. It's probably an hour well spent for Port Royal voters and worthwhile for anybody who's interested in the overall direction of our region. Port Royal's equal in size by population to the city of Beaufort, and home to 2 of those military bases and significant redevelopment opportunities. So the leadership over the next 4 years will be consequential. We tried to ask a lot of questions in the forum that would be germane to business owners. We hope you'll go take a look. And for those who are living in the town of Port Royal, go to the polls. Other issues.
Hey, Ian, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
Jim, jump in.
Does the chamber ever endorse candidates for any office, council members or mayors, or do they kind of stay out of it?
We have not endorsed candidates, Jim. That hasn't been a part of our track record in the past. We do work to make sure our members have an opportunity to get to know the candidates, understand their views, and see how they align with general pro-business positions and concerns the chamber holds. But we have not endorsed candidates, and we will not endorse in this race either.
Okay, thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Also on the local front, we've been very actively engaged in the city of Beaufort's development code review process. This kicked off way back in the spring, and they have added a new meeting each month since then to work methodically through the Beaufort code. Some pretty significant changes have come out about this. Come out from this process. One of those is the consolidation of the current design review board and the Metropolitan Planning Commission, which is a multi-jurisdiction group, into a single city planning commission that would have responsibility for both vertical construction and the kind of horizontal land use that are the two different responsibilities now of the design review board and the planning commission. It also removes that planning commission from a multi-jurisdiction town, city, county body into a single city body. There have been some consternation about that. The chamber did not weigh in on that point in particular, but many of our members raised some questions and voiced their own personal views on that topic. And it's one we're monitoring. I think it's a good faith effort by the city to have a more swift, certain outcome for proposed development projects and business expansions. I think that is their intent with this exercise. And they've assured the community that regional coordination can continue to happen at a high level through the Northern Regional Plan Commission, which remains intact, and they intend to kind of reinvigorate their meeting schedules and their agenda volume. So look for that change coming likely next year. That hasn't been fully approved yet by council, but that's likely to happen. Another significant change out of that process is the Historic District Review Board. The chamber did request a business community representative seat on that board. We did not get that. There were at the beginning of this process 5 members on that board. There are still 5. 3 of those seats are reserved for design community professionals, folks like architects, preservationists, interior designers, people who are involved in the rehabilitation of historic homes are 3 of the 5 seats. The Historic Beaufort Foundation had 1 direct appointed seat. We asked if the city council would nominate or designate that 5th remaining at-large seat as a business community representative, somebody to be the voice of the investor community in that review process, to bring a little bit of additional balance to that board. The city council instead, after multiple rounds of discussion and lots of public input in all directions, decided to remove the Historic Beaufort Foundation's seat from that body and to not grant the chamber's request. They also have appointed new members to that board. Again, I think the composition of the board is probably far less important than the charge they're given by city council. And our argument was the 2014 comprehensive plan, now just months away from being a decade old, included a significant amount of infill and redevelopment as desired by the city and endorsed by voters, particularly along Boundary, along Bladen, Charles, and somewhat along Carteret Street. There's pretty specific outcomes desired. All of those require private investment and require action by individual landholders. This is certainly a region that values sustainability. There's probably no more sustainable growth than infill using existing stormwater and road capacity, allowing more walkability, more mixed use. And the city's code has been redesigned to accommodate that kind of mixed use, slightly more dense infill development, but largely those projects have not happened. And it's hard to diagnose that as anything other than a symptom of the process the city's put in place, because it has not until recently been about the availability of financing. It's not mostly been about zoning available, and it's certainly not been about demand over the past decade in our region for housing or commercial or a number of other uses. So we did encourage the city to make some changes to their process, and we hope some of those will continue. The other big thing we have asked for out of the city through this process is more missing middle housing, basically code changes to allow duplexes and townhomes and smaller footprint kinds of units where land costs can be divided across more housing units. We basically asked the city to make that kind of housing as readily available to permit as single family housing is. Right now, mostly those kinds of units require a special use permit or a variance or a rezoning. That means often multiple trips through multiple public bodies with a lot of opportunity for folks in a neighborhood to oppose. My own neighborhood, Pigeon Point, is a perfect example of this. Great opportunities for infill redevelopment with walkability and proximity, big sized lots, lots of parks. It's a perfect opportunity to take one lot that was one single family home and create a duplex where two folks can have an opportunity to get in. If we want more naturally occurring, non-subsidized housing that's attainable for people who are waking up and working every day in our region, we're going to have to do these kinds of creative infill. And we see this as a great opportunity for the city to lead the way in our region in that process. I believe council is disposed to that. Again, coming out of these workshops, nothing has happened yet, but they are laying the foundation on that front, and we'll be continuing to follow those efforts all the way through, hopefully to adoption in the city code. Those workshops will be suspended in November and December, and will resume in January. So we've got a lot to keep our eye on, but a little less on that front over the next couple months. Any other questions on the municipal front? Oh, I didn't mention City of Beaufort special election. There are only 2 candidates filed. Both of them are former city councilmen, Phil Cromer and Mike Sutton. Mike Sutton ran for mayor in 2020 against Stephen Murray. Phil Cromer served 2 terms on city council, and his most recent term ended last year. Those are the 2 gentlemen who are filed. We have invited both to a candidate forum. That date tentatively is December 4th, but we have to make sure that both of them are indeed available on that date. So don't mark your calendars just yet. We haven't publicized that date yet, but that's the date we are aiming for. Our intent is to hold a candidate forum with both gentlemen there to ask them about their vision for the future of the city of Beaufort and the region as a whole. Any questions on the municipal front? Okay. Seeing none, I've got another big topic I wanted to cover, but we could close with that. I'd like to invite Will Frierson from the South Carolina Chamber, our great partners, if he's available, if he wants to jump in. We hosted a grassroots tour with the South Carolina Chamber here earlier this month. We were happy to have South Carolina Chamber President Bob Morgan with us at our office. I have the presentation pulled up, but since we have the pro on the call, why don't we just let him say a few words about the South Carolina Chamber's grassroots tour, your findings, and what you see on the line for the coming legislative session.
Perfect. Thank you, Ian, and good morning, folks. And appreciate y'all inviting me to join. I think I'll be with y'all in early December to talk about our competitive agenda once we finalize that here at our board meeting annual summit in 3 weeks. I actually have the analysis in front of me. I may bring that over and share my screen if y'all can see that. Spontaneous. Let me go on real quick.
You should have authority right now.
All right, let's. Can y'all see this?
Yes.
Beautiful. So we have finished the grassroots tour. We had our last virtual meeting yesterday. This is not fully updated. So we ended up with 895 responses over 26 stops with 42 local champs involved. General in line with kind of where we were last year, same thing. Folks are pretty mixed on the U.S. economy, slightly more pessimistic. Also, they feel a little bit worse about the economy today compared to this time last year. Really saw these numbers decline over the past month or so, I'd say, which ironic given the GDP numbers that were announced yesterday. But we asked folks about South Carolina's economy. They are very positive. Nearly 83% say it's either excellent or good. Encouraging, but also kind of showing that, folks have the kind of macro level look at, the news, and like we kind of get told to feel bad about the economy. But, in South Carolina, for the most part, things are doing pretty well. Biggest challenges, no surprise, lack of workers has been the number one most common response, followed by inflation, increased input costs, and then rising interest rates. I think last year inflation probably was number one, lack of workers number two, but pretty consistent there. When you ask folks what's the biggest drag on their earnings potential, it's worker wages and benefits, followed by fixed costs, whether that's energy, rent, equipment or materials. Equipment materials probably has to do with inflation and different cost of goods and going into inputs, and then insurance costs, health, liability, property, etc. Is third at nearly 20%. We'll talk about that in a second. We asking folks if they're struggling to hire and retain qualified workers. Nearly 70% say yes. That's not a surprise. Last year it was probably in the mid 70s, so it's gone down a little bit, but still lack of workers is a big priority for businesses. When you ask folks what's the best way to get them off the sideline, those 1.8 million sideliners, number one is increased wages and benefits. Obviously, you will not see us put that on any type of agenda to tell employers they have to raise wages or offer more benefits, but contributes to the inflationary pressures that we see. Childcare kind of pops up as an issue, and I'll touch on that here in a second. Apprenticeship programs, not all companies utilize them. There's been some interesting data for us to analyze and collect. Asking folks, would they be interested in a reimbursement from the state for providing employees with childcare? 70% say yes, and this is what I remind them, that we have a child care tax credit that was passed into law in 1995, but it's just not utilized. Bob Bay had mentioned this when he spoke to y'all's group. In 2021, only 20 companies across the state utilize this tax credit, which allows employers to receive a 50% reimbursement for any type of direct payments they make to an authorized child care center up to $6,000. So 50% of $6,000, they can get $3,000 back per employee. Couple challenges there. One, it's against corporate income tax, and as we know, a lot of companies in South Carolina, they have low corporate income tax liabilities. So tax credits against their corporate income tax are just not beneficial. Second part is we know child care costs are in the average across the state $11,000. In the more coastal areas like Beaufort, it's probably higher, at the higher end of that. So we're looking and talking with leaders in the House and Senate to modernize that tax credit to make it more palatable to businesses. One of the ways is allowing the option for it to be taken against withholding taxes. That's what we do for the job development credits for a lot of the big companies we recruit, but also for the E-zone credit, which is for upskilling and reskilling initiatives. That's also taken against withholding taxes. So making that more desirable and probably raising that cap from 6,000 to 10,000. So there's some draft legislation we're working on and feel pretty good that childcare is an area that the General Assembly wants to see addressed. They started a small special committee to understand childcare challenges across the state. And with leaders like Shannon Erickson, in the House who have that background, I think there's an appetite to do something there. Licensure, that's obviously an issue that's sensitive to military spouses. Support for making it easier for those individuals to get occupational licenses. This was a leading question about environmental permitting. Got the answer I was looking for. Just trying to push back on efforts by environmental groups to delay a lot of permits that businesses are trying to get. This was kind of shocking to me, asking about the long-term threat to South Carolina's economic competitiveness. Almost 50% say it's our K-12 education quality, dwarfing affordable housing at second at 17%. So, clearly something businesses care about and want to look for solutions to improve education, public education across South Carolina. On infrastructure, surprisingly, folks are a little bit more positive on a gas tax. We all know that will never happen again, but use that as a metric to look at the electric vehicle infrastructure fee. We charge, and Bob mentioned this, every 2 years, $120 EV registration fee that goes towards road maintenance. So annualized, it's $60 a month. $60 a year, which is significantly less than what some other states in the Southeast charge. There in the mid 100s. But when you think about how much the individual that drives a gas-powered vehicle, they pay about $250 a year in the gas tax to go towards road maintenance. So really is a question of fairness, $250 versus $60 as we get more EVs across South Carolina. They weigh more and they put more burden on our roads. So looking at this as a way to get more infrastructure money, particularly as we look to repair some bridges across the state. Let's see. Taxes, we continuing to cut the income tax. It's going to get down to 6% over the next 4 years. Question of whether it'd be worth it to spend about $425 million to take it immediately down to 6%. Some support for that, but just given where the budget dollars are going to come in, the Board of Economic Advisors will meet in a couple of weeks. I should have those numbers when we meet again in early December. But state leaders are expecting only $350 million in surplus revenue this year instead of the billions like we've had in the past handful of years. The sales tax base, broadening of the tax base. I think there are going to be some pushes for comprehensive tax reform by a few senators this year. It's not going to happen. The bills that are out there that some folks are looking for support, just really they're well intentioned. They're trying to get rid of Act 388. They're trying to reduce the sales tax rate down to 3%, lower the corporate rate as well down from 5% to 4%. The challenge becomes the only way to do that is to tax every single service, which businesses don't pay for many services, don't pay taxes on many services. Individuals don't pay taxes on many services. So if you broaden the tax base by 67%, yes, the rate's lower, but you're going to be paying significantly more. And one of the bills that's out there, I think, would result in a $970 million tax hike on business. So that's something we're watching. Again, well-intentioned efforts, probably not going anywhere, but just looking for unintended consequences. Trying to get to some more interesting highlights here. Health outcomes, some support that may get some traction next year. It didn't score as important on our ranking as I thought it might, but telehealth, there was some legislation that passed the House last spring that changes the definitions of telehealth to make it easier for individuals to get into a doctor-patient relationship with a telehealth provider, really trying to encourage the use of telehealth in more rural parts of the state as a solution to kind of improve health outcomes. Let's see. And then our favorite subject, tort reform. Obviously, support is there amongst the business community, and I'll touch on this here in a second when we wrap up. I actually think that was the last question, so that's perfect timing. So as we've mentioned a few times, obviously, and I know y'all are seeing in that part of the state, and Thomas, you're probably can speak to this even more eloquently than I eloquently. Man, it's early on. I've only had one cup of coffee. The lack of liquor liability insurance carriers, in many parts of the state, we're down to just 2 to 3 providers, and bars and restaurants and taverns are seeing 3-4x increases in their coverage just because no one wants to underwrite the risk due to our abusive trial lawyer system. The House, many folks recognize that our joint and several liability system is the systemic cause and is why this is actually happening, not the 2017 law that established that $1 million mandatory minimum for on premises liability. The challenge is the House does not want to work hard, and that's disingenuous. The House does not want to put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into passing a joint and several bill if it's just going to die in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So the House is probably going to pass a standalone package that kind of looks towards this dram shop piece, maybe lowering that mandatory minimum for on-site premises liability, also exempting VFWs and other nonprofits from those type of policies. Again, they're trying to provide relief to these small bars, restaurants, but we don't think it's going to accomplish the long-term goal of bringing carriers back, of reducing rates, and really fixing the problem that we have. We're still focused on pushing for our fix to joint and several in the Senate. Really working hard to try and get that set for special order early in the session. We have 24 co-sponsors of that bill. Just the challenge becomes we don't have the votes in the Judiciary Committee, so we'll have to do some special procedure to get it up to the floor for a full vote, and we'll have to have the votes to have cloture, which is 26 in the Senate, and so it's an obstacle. So hopeful. I think in an election year, the more likely outcome is something focused specifically at the alcohol liability crisis, and we'll see. I think that's what is on the cards, at least on the House side. But again, in addition to some continued workforce efforts, we're optimistic on child care. That's a big focus. We think that will be had. The other big item that is going to take a lot of oxygen next year is energy reform. There is the ad hoc committee in the House focused on economic development and utility modernization. They are looking to build more natural gas lines, particularly down in Hampton County, and I guess going down in Kennedy, so that part of the state. To increase our generation. I think there's a growing concern by lawmakers and utilities that we don't have the capacity to keep landing the big projects across South Carolina that we've been landing the past couple of years. There was a hearing held last week or 2 weeks ago to talk about that. So natural gas permitting is going to be one of the issues. Looking at ways long-term how to make sure South Carolina is a player in the advanced nuclear arena. So keep your eyes on that. I think there's going to be an energy bill that passes the House pretty quickly in January, and then we'll see what the Senate ultimately does with that. Obviously, from y'all's perspective, Senator Davis has been, the chair of the Energy Market Reform Study Committee that released its proposal last year. I don't think that's going anywhere. It came out with some ideas that folks are not thrilled about, joining regional transmission organizations. So, so from a business perspective, big issues: workforce / childcare, energy, and court reform, liability. So maybe I'll have some more. When we get back together in December, I'll kind of know where we're focused from the chamber side, and maybe have a bigger sense on some other issues. But as of now, and judicial reform, that's another issue that I think is going to get a lot of attention next year. So.
Will, thank you for the impromptu update. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the work the South Carolina Chamber does to help gather input statewide and communicate that to lawmakers. For folks on the call, the Beaufort Regional Chamber is supportive of tort reform. Will mentioned joint and several. Basically, what we're asking for is a more fair share apportionment of responsibility or liability, financial fault in the event of a injury lawsuit. This has direct implications for your insurance premiums. The climate we have in the state effectively right now allows for one deeper pocketed party, often a business, to be held fully liable for the damages, even if they're only partially or minimally liable as a party in an incident. Other parties can settle out, and there can be only one primary target in a lawsuit. That happens routinely, and it absolutely drives up the price of insurance. We've got a standing position on that. We'll continue to advocate on that issue. This is going to have to be a statewide coalition to get it across the finish line. And as Will noted, an election year is often a poor year, particularly an election year when all House and Senate members are up. That is 2024. This could be a tough year to see big movement on any major controversial topics. But we are also evaluating a position on the more narrow issue of the liquor liability lawsuit issue. That's certainly germane to a lot of our folks in this community. People do want to come be able to get a good cocktail when they visit Bay Street for the weekend. So,
and Ian, you hit the nail on the head on that. I mean, the challenge is obviously solutions to address that crisis are pro-business. I mean, that's anything they do there to alleviate those burdens on those small businesses. I mean, it's good for business in South Carolina. So we don't want to do anything to handicap that if something's coming down the train tracks. But just you always wonder and worry that doing piecemeal fixes compromise the ability to do systemic fixes long term. So that's something that organizations like ours also have to weigh too. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting in an election year.
Will, thank you. Any questions for Will?
Hey, Ian. Hey,
Thomas.
Will. Thomas Talo. I appreciate you touching on that. Again, we joke around the office. We think it's probably going to take a legislator going to their favorite watering hole and realizing they've lost their liquor license to really enact change. But it's the joint and several piece is huge. And I would say to a lesser extent, I do think it affects the state of construction defect, which, I mean, we continue to see just, we're obviously biased, but in our opinion, just crazy judgments that are not proportionally liable for these contractors. And it's really driving up the cost of insurance for construction, for contractors, specifically coastal South Carolina. And I think the next issue, we had liquor liability would probably be the top. The construction defect state of the contractor market is not far below that. And it's a challenge, and it's something we would love to see, I know, in our industry, more reform on.
And Thomas, and the irony of that is that, state lawmakers and others are championing all the federal dollars that we're receiving for, state infrastructure, and it takes contractors and construction workers to do that. And, you have a certain subsection that are like, yeah, let's build more, but also let me keep my eye out if I need to sue on and collect judgment against those same firms that we're incentivizing. So yeah, that's thanks for pointing that out. And we'll certainly, the challenge becomes is when the plaintiff's attorneys say this is an insurance issue. It's not an insurance issue. It's a lawyer issue. So,
and this can feel pretty in the weeds. If you're an F&B business, the ability to sell liquor by the drink and be have the adequate insurance coverage to know you're not going to completely lose your shirt in the event some overserved person makes a terrible decision is an existential issue for your business. and it's a significant growing cost. So we're really not talking about an issue that's just narrowly in the weeds. It's front and center for a whole sector. Similarly, the construction liability issue, that's one of those death by 1,000 cuts kinds of things that contribute to the cost of housing that is front and center for every employer in our region, the ability for their employees to find a place to live. There's no one silver bullet. There's also no one single issue at fault. It's multiple layers of added costs that contribute to that unaffordable home. Construction liability is one of those things that if we're going to get serious about affordable housing, we probably have to get serious about mitigating the risk on the builder as well. So, Thomas, I saw you go back off mute. We still have some time. Do you want to jump back in?
No, I was just going to say there is a glimmer of hope. Just pointing out, and again, not to get into the weeds, the Department of Revenue, who largely manages the licensure for food and beverage, specifically liquor licenses, they did approve dropping the limits of the requirement from $1 million to 500, 1 million. So 500 per incident, 1 million per policy period. So that in a way will hopefully at least start plugging the hole and just limiting the liability. But whether or not, how quickly that happens, it's not going to go super fast, but we're certainly hopeful that that was a step in the right direction.
And for everybody's knowledge, Senator Davis did come out and endorse last year the tort reform package. The chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Luke Rankin, did not. He was the only Senate committee chair that did not endorse tort reform, and is obviously the body that tort reform would have to go through. But this is the kind of issue that our lawmakers need to hear from constituents about. Your voices matter here. Thanks for speaking up. If you're in the room with them at our candidate forum or legislative reception or any other opportunity throughout the year. Will, thanks. Hope your Demon Deacons do well against Florida State this weekend, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, we're a house divided. My fiance is a Florida State grad, so I've had the distinct privilege of being able to claim for the past 3 years that we're the superior program, but I think I'm about to get my comeuppance this week, and regret being a little braggadocious the past couple of years. So that's our
guys. I will wrap today with a request to go out to the polls on November 7th and vote yes for the Beaufort County School District bond referendum. That both the Chamber Board and our Military Enhancement Committee have independently evaluated and endorsed the school bond referendum. This is a $439 million bond. If adopted, the tax rates would stay level in Beaufort County. So you're not seeing an additional increase in tax rates as a result of supporting this bond to fund school construction. The county successfully managed a 2019 bond measure that funded the reconstruction of the Robert Smalls Leadership Academy in our part of the county, in addition to other school expansions. Among the projects slated for upgrades this year, a rebuilding of Hilton Head Island High School, complete replacement of Ladies Island Middle School, new gym and rec facilities for Riverview Charter School in our area, new career and technical education, either renovations or additions for all middle and high schools. This is a really big deal for anybody in the trades. They're trying to make sure every school has an opportunity for young people to get that career and technical education exposure throughout their primary education. Also, school safety improvements district-wide and technology upgrades district-wide. This is one of those constant reinvestment kinds of things that a growing community like ours needs to do to continue being competitive It's also one of the top issues for the military. I mentioned this earlier. You know, when the Pentagon looks at the communities around its bases, they want to see sustainable, vibrant, economically prosperous communities where military families can thrive. They want to see patriotic communities that support service members and their families. They also really, really want to see communities with great schools. It's one of the biggest things that causes service members to separate from the military, from active duty, is the success of their kids, the academic success of their kids, particularly when they're having to move every 2 to 4 years into a new school district. Facilities are not the only thing that make a school district great, but it's hard to be a great school district when you have a failing HVAC system at your school. So the upgrades and things that are planned from this investment are good news for our region's economy, and they are level in terms of their tax impact. Those are the reasons for our support, and we hope everybody will get out there and vote. You'll hear more from us over the coming weeks as we get right down the stretch to November 7th. I'm happy to entertain any questions. We do have 2 board members on the line, our past chair, Jennifer Tuckwiller, and as well as Thomas Talo, who were in those briefings. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure either one of them might want to jump in as well. All right. Hey, hearing no questions, I've hit the end of the list of topics I intended to cover. And we got a lot content upgrade thanks to our good friend Will. Any questions from anybody else? Any updates or information to share from anybody else on today's call? Okay, hearing none, we'll call it a morning. Thank you all for joining. Megan, I know we have another one of these on the calendar. Can you remind everybody and me when?
Yes, December 1st, most likely the two topics we'll focus on will be the upcoming city election and then Will's report that's a preview of the coming year at the state level. As he mentioned, they are fine-tuning that now and will be much more honed in on what they hope to fight for and achieve in legislative session.
Thank you, Megan. Everybody, this is our primary and core purpose: supporting local businesses through information, advocacy, and connections. The advocacy work is an ongoing thing for us. We are constantly engaging with elected officials at all levels, sharing your lived experience as business owners and operators and the data we know about the region. Please feed us information. Let us know what you're thinking. That helps us. And information sessions like this are a big way to get more members involved. Invite your friends, folks you know in the business community here locally to be a part of the chamber and to be a part of this Community Advancement Council for these kinds of updates. I think the more people who have a better understanding of what's going on in our community, the more informed voters we have, the better off we'll all be.
I might just make one more plug. 1 week from today, we're going to have a coffee with colleagues in Port Royal at Springer Healthcare System, which is a fabulous host. They have a beautiful facility, and I would bet Port Royal candidates will be there if you want to get a chance to chat with them.
Good update. Thank you, Megan. Thanks everybody for being on this morning. We'll adjourn it there. Hope you have a great Friday.
Thanks, guys.